Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to AITA Chronicles, where Reddit drama gets real. Today's episode, it's a full-blown emotional roller coaster. We've got betrayal at bachelorette parties, honeymoon drama in someone else's bedroom, money meltdowns, family name wars, and a poor cat owner who just wanted support and got free babysitting duty instead. Seriously, today's stories will have you shaking your head, clutching your chest, and saying, "Oh no, they didn't," more than once. Whether you're folding laundry, on a walk, chilling in bed, or just soaking in the chaos, make yourself comfy. This is the kind of drama you'll want to see through to the end. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We're getting close to 10K, and every single click helps push us there. Let's get into it. Am I the asshole for recording my friend's fiancé at her bachelorette party and playing the recording for him? The long weekend was supposed to be fun. Sun, sand, booze, and no responsibilities. That kind of carefree energy that only comes from renting a beach house with a group of people all looking for an escape. And for the most part, it was just that. Laughter. Waves crashing in the distance, a hot tub humming into the night. The writer was there, invited to celebrate their friend's fiancé's last wild weekend before tying the knot. But what started as an innocent getaway quickly took a turn into something uncomfortable and, honestly, unforgettable. It happened on the deck, quiet, peaceful, just the sound of the ocean. The writer had stepped away from the buzz, letting the breeze carry their thoughts. But voices carried too. Drunken, carefree ones floating up from the hot tub where the bride and two of her friends were lounging, clearly tipsy, their guards completely down. The bride said she felt more relaxed than she had in a long time. Harmless, right? Anyone would assume she meant wedding planning stress. But then, one of her friends laughed and asked about the little monster. And just like that, the mood shifted. Now, to the unknowing ear, it could have been anything. A pet, a sibling. But the writer knew. They were talking about his son. Their friend's son. And what followed, it wasn't just petty or drunk talk. It was cruel. The bride giggled, nodded, agreed with everything. She laughed when her friends mocked the child. She said, "Too bad he's not old enough to send to military school, like the boy was some delinquent, like he was disposable." The writer froze. That wasn't just distasteful, that was chilling. And so they did what most wouldn't dare. They pulled out their phone and hit record. Not for revenge, not for drama, but out of something deeper, concern. Because sometimes when you witness something so vile, staying quiet starts to feel like complicity. The recording ended when the conversation shifted. But the words, they lingered. They stuck to the skin. Back from the trip, the writer met with their friend, the father of the boy they'd spoken so horribly about. They played the recording, and in that room, silence became louder than any waves or laughter from the weekend before. He didn't say much. He listened. He asked for the recording, then asked the writer to delete it. And the writer said yes, but didn't follow through. Not yet. Because deep down, a storm was brewing. One called doubt, one called fear for the child. What if this woman becomes his stepmother? What if those words weren't just drunken ramblings, but glimpses into her real feelings? Now, here's where things get complicated. The writer is racked with guilt. This wasn't their relationship. They weren't supposed to interfere. But can you really stand by when a child's emotional safety might be at stake? So the question echoes, am I the asshole? Let's pause here because this one hits differently. This isn't some petty roommate dispute or mismatched wedding invitation drama. This is about a kid, an innocent boy, being mocked, belittled, dehumanized by the woman who might one day become a central figure in his life. There's a heavy, awful reality here. Sometimes people wear masks so well that it takes a moment of raw, unfiltered truth, like a drunken night in a hot tub, to reveal what's underneath. And when you catch a glimpse of that ugliness, how can you unsee it? The writer didn't go looking for this. They weren't snooping. They didn't bait or provoke. They just happened to be at the wrong place, or maybe the right place at the right time. And yes, it's uncomfortable. Yes, it's invasive. But what would have been worse? Pretending it didn't happen? When a line is crossed and a child becomes the punchline, silence stops being neutral. In this case, the writer wasn't just a friend. They were a witness. and maybe even a protector. So no, the writer is not the asshole. They were the only one who didn't pretend everything was fine. Whether their friend walks away from this engagement or not, that's his choice. But at least now, he knows. And that little boy, at least someone's looking out for him, even if he'll never know it. What do you think? Was recording justified in the name of protecting a child? Or did the writer go too far by stepping into something that wasn't their business? Let me know in the comments. This one's going to stir some opinions. Am I the asshole for saying my brother-in-law and his future wife can't sleep in our bedroom while we host them on their honeymoon? Some boundaries are hard to define, others are just common sense. But somehow, when family is involved, even the most obvious lines can get shockingly blurry. The writer, a 35-year-old woman, lives with her husband in one of those picturesque places people post about on Instagram and dream of visiting after saying, "I do." Sunlight spilling over hills, that soft air that whispers peace, honeymoon central. And understandably, her brother-in-law and his fiancée decided this was the spot to celebrate their new life together. They're tight on funds, so when they asked a month ago if they could stay at the writer's home for their honeymoon, the answer was yes. No hesitation. After all, it's family, and hosting family, especially in hard times, is what you do, right? But then came the request that threw everything off balance. They didn't just want a place to crash. They didn't want the air mattress in the guest room. No, they wanted the master bedroom, the writer's bedroom. Let that sit for a moment. Not just their guests, not just honeymooners, but honeymooners asking to use their host's personal bed during the most intimate week of their lives. And here's the kicker. They didn't explain in detail why. Just mumbled something about the air mattress not being honeymoon appropriate. A vague, gentle way of saying, we want a proper bed so we can have lots of newlywed sex and yours looks comfy. Look, let's cut through the fluff here. This wasn't about sleep quality. This wasn't about back pain or soft pillows. This was about vibes, about privacy, about a sacred physical space that, let's be honest, no one should be asking to use unless your name is on the lease or the will. When the writer's husband brought the request to her, she didn't explode. She didn't shame or mock. She simply told the truth. She wasn't comfortable with it. And honestly, who would be? That bed, that bedroom, it's theirs. A deeply personal, private place. The place they unwind, laugh, argue, reconnect. The idea of someone else, especially your in-laws, taking over that space for romantic purposes? No. Just no. And thankfully, her husband agreed. There was a quiet understanding there. Love your brother, help him where you can, but protect your home's boundaries. But apparently, not everyone in the family sees it that way. Cue the drama. Cue the flying opinions from all sides. Suddenly, the sister-in-law's chiming in, talking about how it's their honeymoon and how they shouldn't have to sleep on an air mattress. Like the writer and her husband are forcing them to sleep in a parking lot. Let's be real. They're still getting a free place to stay in a vacation-worthy area at no cost. A private room, shelter, safety, warmth. But because there's an air mattress instead of a queen-size bed, now they're the victims. And here's where it gets even messier. The writer's husband, torn between being a loyal partner and a loving brother, starts to waver. Maybe we should just let them. But the writer? She holds her ground because some lines matter. Because some discomfort isn't worth the approval of extended family. Because she knows, deep down, this isn't about being a bad host, it's about self-respect. And let's talk about the unspoken here. Yes, the request was about the mattress. But more than that, it was about comfort during sex. Let's just call it what it is. The writer summed it up best. They want our room so they can comfortably bang during their honeymoon. And you know what? That's not her problem. It's not her responsibility to provide the perfect ambiance for someone else's honeymoon sex. That's just not part of the host duties. There's being generous, and then there's being walked over. So now the writer is stuck asking herself, am I the asshole for saying no to something that felt invasive, for refusing to surrender her personal sanctuary in the name of family harmony? No, absolutely not. Let's be honest here. This situation is weird. There's no polite way to dress it up. The bedroom is a sacred space in any household, a place tied to intimacy, comfort, even vulnerability. You don't just hand that over like a spare key to the car. And while it might feel like just a bed to some people, for many couples, especially those who've built their home with care and boundaries, it's never just a bed. It's where life happens, where memories linger. The writer isn't selfish. She offered them her home, her space, her hospitality. But what she didn't offer, and shouldn't have to, was her bed. If that means they'll be a little less comfortable for a few nights on a guest room air mattress, so be it. It's still a gesture of generosity. It's still kindness. Because being a good host doesn't mean abandoning your comfort for someone else's convenience. What do you think? Should the writer have made an exception because it's a honeymoon? Or are some things, like your own bedroom, just off limits, no matter the occasion? Let me know in the comments. This one's bound to stir up a few family debates. Am I the asshole for refusing to share my son's money with my fiance's daughter? Some betrayals don't come with a slap or a scream. They arrive quietly, in a lawyer's office or in the cold, stunned silence of someone who just realized they can't manipulate you after all. The writer, a 35-year-old woman, was building something that felt solid, a new chapter. She'd found love again, and not the rushed, reckless kind. This was measured. Her fiancé got along with her 4-year-old son. Even her ex-husband, the boy's father, approved of the new man in their lives. There was peace, and behind that peace, a quiet act of love and foresight. You see, 3 years ago, before this relationship even existed, the writer had a stroke of luck, a lottery win. Not enough to walk away from life and disappear into yachts and private jets, but enough. Enough to breathe a little easier, enough to plan for her son's future. She didn't squander it. She didn't flaunt it. Instead, she did something a lot of people wouldn't. She tucked 75% of it away into a savings account for her son, an account he wouldn't touch until he was 21, an account that would one day open doors for him, education, stability, maybe even a chance to build a life without the weight so many of us carry from the start. This wasn't about indulgence. It was about protection, legacy, love. But the writer never told her fiancé how much she'd won. She let him believe what he wanted to believe, that they were comfortable, yes, but not lavish. She didn't lie. She just didn't elaborate. And maybe somewhere deep down, she knew that money changes people, sometimes in ways that can't be undone. Then came the prenup. Standard, smart, especially for someone with a child and assets to protect. She insisted on it because she knew better. And that's when everything unraveled, because in that lawyer's office, the truth came out. Her fiancé saw the numbers. He saw how much was in her son's account. And suddenly, everything changed. He didn't speak with her. He didn't ask questions. He didn't try to understand. He stormed out, disappeared for 2 days, no explanation, no return calls. And in that silence, the writer saw the truth. The love she thought she had was conditional. It lasted only as long as he believed the money might one day be his. So she made a decision. She wrote to him, said it was over, and told him he could have the engagement ring back. Simple. Final. She wasn't going to fight for a man who disappeared the moment things stopped benefiting him. But of course, he came back. They always do, don't they? When the money settles in their mind, when the shock wears off and greed creeps in, whispering justifications into their ears. He stood at her door, no longer furious, but full of questions. He claimed he was in shock and now wanted details. Where did the money come from? What else had she been hiding? And then he dropped the real bomb. He had a 5-year-old daughter, a child the writer never knew about. No photos, no stories, not even a passing mention in 2 whole years of dating. And now, standing on her doorstep, he declared that it would only be fair if his daughter got half of the money that was intended for her son. His logic? That the money came from luck, not labor. That it wasn't earned through sweat and effort, so she should just divide it. Let that sink in. He hid a child for 2 years. He ghosted her when he found out the money wasn't his, and then had the audacity to demand a child he never told her about should be entitled to it. That wasn't love, that wasn't partnership, that was someone looking for a payout. The writer didn't scream. She didn't explain. She handed back the ring and kicked him out. But he wasn't done. Not by a long shot. Since that day, she's been flooded with anonymous messages, burner social media accounts, strange phone numbers, all spewing the same venom. You're the asshole. You're destroying a little girl's future. You're heartless. And the worst part, this daughter, this mysterious child, only existed in her world after that lawyer's office. She's never seen a photo, never heard a bedtime story, never even knew the girl's name. So let's call it for what it is, a desperate play for access to money that was never his. So now the writer is left asking, am I the asshole? For protecting what was meant for her son? For refusing to let a grown man guilt trip her into handing over a child's future? For walking away when the mask finally slipped? No, she's not. This post isn't about greed. It's about betrayal. About how some people see your generosity and mistake it for weakness. About how far someone will go when they think there's a dollar sign attached to your love. The writer made her choice the day she opened that savings account for her son. She chose his safety, his growth, his future. And the moment someone tried to rip that away, she chose herself too. There's nothing selfish about that. There's power in it. What do you think? Was the writer too harsh? Or did she dodge a financial bullet dressed in a suit and a smile? Sound off in the comments. This one's got layers. Am I the asshole for firmly refusing to name my child after my dad's late wife? Some people will hear this story and immediately choose a side. Others will pause just for a second and try to imagine the full picture. The grief, the family pressure, the quiet rebellion of naming your child on your own terms. But let's start from the beginning. The writer, a soon-to-be father, is navigating what should be one of the most joyful seasons of life, expecting his first child with his wife. A beautiful, sacred moment that most people hope to experience without interference, without expectations. But life, as it always does, complicates things. Last year, the writer's father lost his wife of 20 years, a woman the writer had known for a long time, but not a woman he was particularly close to. She wasn't his mother. She was his dad's second chapter, his dad's love story. And understandably, her death shook the family. But here's where it turns. Just weeks after her passing, the writer and his wife learned they were expecting. News that should have been met with unfiltered celebration was instead met with projection. Suddenly, his unborn child became a symbol, a chance to preserve a memory, a supposed sign from above to keep his father's late wife's name alive. Not a suggestion, not a conversation, but an expectation that this child, not even born yet, would carry the name of a woman the writer wasn't even fond of. Think about that. Before they knew the sex, before they considered meaning, before they sat down as a couple to discuss their child's identity, others were already deciding who that child should honor. The pressure came quickly. His father, his half-siblings, all teenagers, all still raw with grief, rallied around the idea. They didn't just suggest naming the baby after her. They insisted. They even offered masculine variations because in their eyes, the symbolism mattered more than the child's identity. But the writer and his wife weren't on board. And from the beginning, he was honest. They weren't considering her name. They weren't interested in variations. This wasn't out of spite. It wasn't some grand protest. It was just their decision. Yet the backlash was immediate. The writer's father said the timing of the pregnancy made it meant to be. That naming the baby after her was not just appropriate, it was necessary. But the writer didn't feel that connection. He wasn't moved by signs or guilt or sentiment wrapped in grief. What he did feel was the weight of trying to celebrate a new life while being haunted by someone else's expectations. And so they pulled back. The writer and his wife created distance from the storm, from the anger, from the emotional manipulation. And behind that distance, they quietly chose something deeply meaningful, to honor the writer's own late mother in a subtle but beautiful way. Their daughter will carry the name of a flower, the favorite of the writer's mom, a quiet tribute, one his father will pick up on immediately, and one the writer knows will sting, because to his father, it'll be a rejection, not just of a name, but of a whole marriage, a whole history, a whole narrative he's clinging to through grief. So the writer took one final step. He made it clear. No more hints, no more soft maybe nots. He told his father, directly and firmly, the decision is made. They will not be naming their child after his wife. It's not up for debate, and it never will be. It wasn't cruel, it was clear. And clarity, when people are grieving, can feel like cruelty. Now the fallout is unfolding. The writer hears the whispers, the rants, the relatives repeating his father's anger, insensitive, disgusting. How dare he not honor the woman who was in his life for 20 years? But here's the truth. Length of time doesn't equal depth of bond. Yes, she was part of his life, but she wasn't his mother. She wasn't someone he had a deep connection with. And naming your child is not about appeasing family dynamics. It's about creating a legacy for your own family. And this child is the beginning of the writer's legacy, not his father's. Let's not forget she had 3 children of her own. If her name means that much, they can carry it forward. That's their right. But to expect it from someone who didn't feel the same connection, that's not grief, that's entitlement. So now the question stands, am I the asshole for refusing to name my child after my dad's late wife? Or is the writer simply drawing a line, protecting his own space, his own child, from being turned into a symbol of someone else's sorrow? This isn't about disrespect, it's about boundaries. You can grieve and still understand that others don't share the same grief. You can honor someone without demanding others do the same. The writer isn't cruel. He's a father who wants his child's name to carry his meaning, not someone else's mourning. So what do you think? Is the writer in the wrong for being this firm? Or is this one of those moments where clarity is the only thing that keeps the peace from crumbling? Am I the asshole for locking my sister's kid in the bathroom for an hour? Let's be honest here. There's a line between holding it together and losing all control. And when that line's being stomped on by a 6-year-old with a Sharpie and a vendetta against furniture, your instincts start to shift. That's exactly where the writer found himself. So here's what happened. The writer, a 28-year-old man just minding his own business, gets asked by his sister to do what many family members have done before. Watch her kid for a few hours. Seems simple enough, right? It's not like she asked him to raise the child. I just keep him alive for an afternoon. And though the writer openly admits he's not the kid-friendly type, he agrees. Because it's family. Because it's just a few hours. But those hours, they were war. At first, things seemed okay. The movie was on, juice was served, and for a fleeting moment, peace actually existed. Then came the shift. You know the one. When a child suddenly transforms from cute and chatty to possessed by chaos. Ryan, the writer's 6-year-old nephew, went full wrecking ball mode. We're talking popcorn dumped like confetti, couch pillows flying like missiles, and total disregard for every word the writer tried to say. And the writer, trying to stay calm, did what he could. He redirected, he asked, he pleaded, nothing worked. But then it escalated. Ryan finds his way into the writer's private bedroom, digs through drawers, and, of course, finds a Sharpie. And what does he do? Tags the walls like it's an open canvas, a child's graffiti spree. And here's where it hits a breaking point, because the writer's old dog becomes the next target. Ryan chases her down, corners her, yanks her tail. Let that sink in. An old dog, not a puppy, not some rambunctious pet. A senior dog, cornered, with no way out. She snaps, not aggressively, just out of fear. And Ryan, he screams like he's been mauled, then hurls a mug at her. That was it. No more bargaining, no more calm tones. The writer knew he couldn't leave this kid running loose. Not for the kid's safety, not for the dog's, and not for his own sanity. So he made a call. He took Ryan, sat him in the bathroom, and locked the door from the outside. Not to punish, not to scare, but to contain. To de-escalate. Now listen, this is the part where opinions split. Some people hear locked in a bathroom and immediately clutch their pearls. But let's slow down. The writer stayed close. He didn't abandon the kid. He talked to him through the door, checked in, monitored him. And yes, it was a small bathroom, but it was safe. It had water, a place to sit, and more calm than the rest of the house. Still, the minutes ticked by. The writer got pulled into cleaning the wreckage in his bedroom, checking on his dog, trying to put his home back together after Hurricane Ryan. By the time he circled back, Nearly an hour had passed, and that's when his sister walked in. Ryan ran out sobbing, because of course he did. He was 6, he'd been locked up, and now his mother was back and he was ready to unleash every ounce of drama in his little heart. The sister exploded. Accusations flew. Abuse. Trauma. You locked up my child. She wasn't interested in context. She wasn't asking what led to it. She didn't want to hear about the Sharpie, the broken boundaries, or the mug aimed at a dog's face. Nope. In her eyes, the writer had become a villain. Now the family's split. Some relatives are calling the writer out. Others understand, maybe because they've raised kids, maybe because they know what it's like to be pushed too far. The writer never screamed, never laid a hand on Ryan. He didn't threaten, didn't belittle, didn't traumatize. He was just a man alone in his home, watching a kid he never wanted to watch, doing everything he could to prevent harm. So, now we arrive at the crossroads. Am I the asshole for locking my sister's kid in the bathroom for an hour? Was it too much? Was it a moment of desperation turned mistake? Or was it the only option left when nothing else worked and everything else had already gone too far? Let's be honest, this wasn't some random tantrum. This was a storm. A 6-year-old unchecked, running wild, hurting pets, destroying property, and ignoring every attempt at redirection. And the writer? He drew a boundary. Not a perfect one. Maybe not the best one. But he drew it. So is he an asshole? Or is he just a human being, tired, overwhelmed, and trying to protect both a child and a dog from a situation spiraling out of control? What do you think? Am I the asshole for refusing to pay for a free meal? My date got through a work trade? Let's set the scene. The writer's getting ready for a first date, a simple, honest attempt at meeting someone new. No games, no schemes, just dinner, conversation, and maybe a spark if the universe felt generous that night. The guy picked the restaurant. It was his choice, his turf. Everything seemed fine. But before they even walked in, the tone was already off. The writer meets her date in the parking lot, and immediately there's this odd detail. He's carrying a medium-sized box. Not flowers, not even a casual, hey, nice to meet you, just this box. And when the writer asks about it, because let's be honest, who wouldn't, he casually brushes it off as work stuff. Says the restaurant owners are his clients. He's a salesman, apparently. Whatever that means. Okay, still manageable. A little strange maybe, but no one's calling it a red flag yet. Then he disappears. Not for a quick minute, not even 5. No, he vanishes for 15 whole minutes. While the writer sits alone at the table like some forgotten accessory to his business deal. This isn't just a work call, it's a full-on side mission. On a first date, 15 minutes of awkward eye contact with the waiter. 15 minutes of dodging glances from other diners, wondering if she's been stood up. Let's not pretend that doesn't sting, and yet she tries to be cool about it. Still giving this guy the benefit of the doubt. He finally sits down. Chatting begins. There's no rush to order, because he's not ready. Meanwhile, the writer's been at this table for nearly 45 minutes with nothing but water. No bread, no appetizer, just conversation and rising discomfort. And somewhere in this overly long pre-meal dialogue, the date starts bragging. Yes, bragging about how he doesn't pay for meals at this place. He trades goods for dinner. That box he brought in, ink cartridges. Seriously. He gives the restaurant a product, say something with a $100 retail price, and they comp him a meal worth that much. He even explains that both sides benefit because the actual cost for each party is way lower than the retail value. It's barter, modernized. No judgment there until you realize he's using this meal, their date, as one of his little trade-offs. So now the writer knows this isn't just a dinner date. It's a business transaction. She's not a guest. She's part of a barter deal, a line item. But still, she eats the meal. She finishes the night. And to be fair, she doesn't ghost him. She doesn't lead him on. She texts him the next day respectfully and says, "Hey, I didn't feel the spark." Honest, direct, the way we wish more people would handle things. And then, the plot twist. He tells her half of the meal that he did not pay for. Let's really think about that. He literally brought in a box of ink cartridges to pay for the meal. No cash, no card, no bill presented. The restaurant gave him free food in exchange. And now he wants money from the writer because what? She didn't give him a second date? He frames it like this unspoken rule. If the woman isn't interested, she should pay her share. Which, sure, in some scenarios, maybe that's reasonable, if both people are just being respectful and honest. But that's not what happened here. There was no bill, no payment, no exchange of currency. The only thing the writer walked away with was a plate of food that was already paid for by ink cartridges. She's not freeloading. She's just not paying into a con. And here's where the entitlement shows. This guy truly believes he's been scammed, that the writer used him for a free dinner, except the dinner wasn't even his to give. He didn't reach for a wallet. He didn't offer to treat. He literally gave a product to a business in exchange for credit. And now to guilt her into reimbursing him for something she never asked for, never benefited from financially, and never agreed to terms on. This wasn't a date. It was a business write-off disguised as romance. And now the writer is being dragged like she committed some kind of dating felony, when in truth, she sat politely, drank her water, waited patiently, endured a barter-based dinner exchange, and ended things with grace. Am I the asshole? The answer feels pretty clear. The writer isn't someone out here trying to hustle a free steak dinner off the dating pool. She didn't even get the decency of a proper host. She was a prop in this guy's little hustle and then penalized for not wanting to stick around. So no, the writer isn't the asshole here. She's just someone who showed up, waited too long, got fed a sales pitch instead of meaningful conversation, and dipped when she realized she was being looped into a weird favor for favor situation. If anything, the only thing she owes this guy is the number to a dating coach, because dinner isn't free when your date becomes part of your business deal. And being honest about a lack of chemistry, that's not rude. That's basic human decency. Am I the asshole for calling my wife a jerk after she told our son's crush that he likes her in front of all his friends? Let's take a deep breath and step into this story. Because this isn't just about teenage crushes or middle school gossip, it's about privacy, respect, and that fine, often invisible line between good intentions and emotional damage. The writer, a 37-year-old father of 3, opens up about a recent moment of tension in his home. His eldest, a 14-year-old son, let's call him Sonny, is in 9th grade, right at that fragile, awkward, emotionally volatile age where everything feels magnified. Every look, every laugh, every whisper in the hallway, it all matters. Sonny had been hanging out with a girl, Tina, a 10th grader, 15 years old. Naturally, curiosity brewed. His mother gently probed, asking if Tina was more than a friend. Sonny was honest. No, it's not Tina, it's someone else. Enter Chris, a girl his age, also in 9th grade. And when the mother asked if Chris knew, Sonny admitted, no, it was a secret, one he clearly wanted to keep to himself. He said it wasn't just about shyness, he was afraid his friends would make fun of him. And here's where the heartbreak begins to take shape. Sonny said Chris was the heaviest girl in their grade. She had difficult skin. She was a tomboy. He didn't say these things with cruelty. He said them with fear, with the raw, nervous honesty of a teenager worried about the harshness of peer judgment. He liked her, but he knew others would twist that into a joke. And so, he kept it to himself. That should have been the end of it. A quiet, private confession held safely between mother and son. But then came Saturday, a casual hangout. Sonny invites some friends over, 5 boys plus 3 girls. Chris is there, Tina is there. The mood is light, the energy relaxed. Kids doing what kids do, until the whole room turns. Because Sonny's mother walks into the living room completely unprompted and in front of all the kids, casually tells Chris, Sonny has a huge crush on you. Just drops it. No build-up, no warning, no sense of privacy, just a public reveal of her son's most vulnerable secret. And the air in that room, it evaporated. Chris stood up, said nothing, and walked out. The rest of the kids followed not long after. The fun was over. The energy shattered. The embarrassment, palpable. Sonny didn't say a word, but slammed every door he touched for the rest of the night. And really, who could blame him? Later that night, as the writer and his wife lay in bed, he calls her what many of us would be thinking. That was a jerk move. His wife tries to defend herself. She says she prevent her son from turning into a bully, that she wanted to make sure he wasn't judging Chris for the way she looked. And while the principle might make sense in theory, the execution, it was devastating. She then tries to personalize it, asking the writer if he would have hidden his feelings for her back in high school. She brings up their daughters, tries to reframe the incident through lenses of what if and imagine if it were your child. But the damage was already done. She ended up sleeping in the guest bedroom. And here's where the heartbreak doubles down. Edit, a sad update. The writer hears the aftermath not from his son, but from Tina's mom, because his son is too upset, too ashamed, too wounded to even speak to his parents about it directly. Turns out, Chris, this sweet girl, this innocent teenager, thought it was a prank. Can you imagine that? Someone publicly announces a crush, and your first reaction is to assume it's a joke. That's how unkind the world has been to this girl. And when Sunny confirms that no, it was real, Chris doesn't feel flattered. She feels humiliated. She asks, if it's true, why would your mom tell me like that? In front of everyone. And here's where Sunny, bless his young heart, tells the truth, because he was ashamed, not of her, but of what his friends would say. And that truth, that honesty, it doesn't make it better. It makes it worse. Chris is hurt, not because she wasn't liked, but because someone liked her and was embarrassed to admit it, because even in affection, she was treated like something to hide. And Sunny, he's spiraling, not just from rejection, but from how this was all handled. His mother's actions didn't just expose his crush, they painted him unintentionally as the kind of boy who'd use someone's appearance as a reason to hide affection. His friends don't know what to think. Some assumed it was a prank. Some are asking what's wrong with his mom. And now, Sunny's only support system through all of this isn't his parents. It's Tina and Tina's mom. So now the writer asks, am I the asshole for calling my wife a jerk? Let's be real. Parenting is hard. Teaching kids empathy, kindness, integrity, that's hard. But there's a difference between guidance and humiliation. You don't teach your kid not to judge others by exposing them in front of their friends. You don't push a lesson so hard it leaves emotional bruises. What Sunny's mother did wasn't evil. It wasn't malicious, but it was misguided, deeply. And it cost her son more than just a red face. It cost him trust, it cost him connection, and maybe for a while it cost him a little piece of his confidence. So no, the writer isn't the asshole. He's a father who saw his child hurting, and he called out the person who caused that hurt, even if it was someone he loves. Because sometimes the bravest thing a parent can do is stand up for their kid, even when the person they're standing up to is standing right beside them. Am I the asshole for telling my neighbor that her newly 18-year-old son asked me out on a date? I said no. Let's set the scene. A quiet suburban street, the kind where everyone knows each other, at least well enough to wave from across the driveway or swap stories over a fence. Families grow up beside one another. Kids ride their bikes past the same houses for years, and the faces next door become part of the rhythm of everyday life. And then, something changes. The writer, a 44-year-old woman, lives just next door to a family she's known for 4 years. They're not strangers, not distant. The neighbor has a husband. They have a son who just turned 18, barely legal, just crossing that line between adolescence and adulthood, the kind of milestone that's often celebrated with cake and a quiet acknowledgement that you're grown now, even if the world doesn't yet see you that way. And apparently, he took that new title seriously. Because just 3 days after his birthday on a Wednesday, this newly minted adult approached the writer and asked her out. Not in passing, not joking, a real, clear, confident invitation. She declined, politely saying, "No thank you." Most would think that would be it. A moment of awkwardness brushed off and left behind. But by Friday, just 2 days later, he asked again. And again, the writer responded the same way. Calm, polite, a clear boundary. No thank you. Now pause here and imagine that. This isn't just some casual flirtation. This is an 18-year-old approaching a woman over twice his age, someone he's known for years as the lady next door, the mom of another grown man. A woman with a life, a history, children, responsibilities, not someone looking to become a chapter in some teenager's misguided experiment in maturity. And the writer, she handled it exactly how a grown adult should, with grace and restraint. But here's the thing that turned this from uncomfortable to complicated. The writer has a 23-year-old son of her own, and as she puts it herself, if her son were asking out neighborhood moms, she'd want someone to tell her. Because it's not just about rejection, it's about accountability. It's about a young man learning that boundaries matter, that maturity isn't just a number, and that your decisions don't exist in a vacuum. So she told his mother, no drama, no gossip, just the truth. Your son asked me out. Twice. I said no both times. And at first, the neighbor, the boy's mom, seemed to appreciate it. She thanked her, civil, grateful even. But the next time the writer saw him, just outside in their adjacent yards, the mood was different. Before he noticed her, his face was normal, relaxed, neutral. But when he looked her way, his expression changed. Enraged. A young man seething in his own yard, fuming with the kind of adolescent intensity that sees honesty as betrayal. And that brings us to the question, is the writer the asshole for telling the boy's mother? Well, here's where it deepens. Edit, the backstory and update. Let's add some layers to this situation. The writer's been living next to this family for 4 years. The boy's parents are still together. He just finished high school, but he's not going to college, at least not yet. He's planning to take a year off, maybe try working in his father's industry before deciding whether college is even necessary. The writer herself has a 23-year-old son with his own apartment and a 16-year-old daughter she co-parents with her ex-husband. She's not some recluse. She's active, responsible, clearly familiar with the nuances of parenting and navigating these complex relationships. And what happens next? The writer approaches the boy's mother again, trying to check in, not to criticize, not to stir anything up, but just to follow up and ask, how did the conversation with your son go? The mom tells her, but the tone, surprisingly harsh. She wasn't gentle. She confronted him, asked why he did it, asked bluntly if something traumatic happened with an older woman in his past. The boy denied anything like that. He accused his mom of making the situation weird, said she was blowing it out of proportion. When she asked why he was trying to date someone her age, his reply was painfully simple, I'm just a normal guy. He then admits he doesn't even like the writer anymore. Why? Because she snitched. He says he's tired of being treated like a child, that he's going to move out, get his own place, live like an adult. And perhaps the most surreal part, the boy's dad finds the entire thing hilarious, just laughs it off. While the mom is annoyed, the son is furious. The writer is caught in the middle of this strange emotional crossfire where doing the mature thing has made her a villain in the eyes of the very person she tried to handle respectfully. And now, she's wondering, can she even stay friends with the mom? Because the air between their homes has changed. Things feel awkward, tense, like everyone's waiting for someone to say the wrong thing again. Maybe, just maybe, when the boy moves out, the tension will ease. But for now, it lingers, thick and silent. So, is the writer the asshole? Absolutely not. Let's be clear, this isn't about age gaps in dating. This isn't about judging young men who admire older women. It's about context. This wasn't a bar. This wasn't a dating app. This was a neighborhood, a family setting. A woman who's watched this boy grow up next door, and she told his mother because she knew that if the roles were reversed, she'd want to know. That's not betrayal, that's respect. The writer didn't humiliate him. She didn't gossip. She didn't blow it up into some neighborhood scandal. She handled it like an adult. And if that's what we're calling snitching these days, maybe more people should be snitches. Because in a world where too many adults ignore red flags or pretend uncomfortable things didn't happen, the writer chose honesty, she chose integrity, and she set a boundary with calm, direct, polite clarity. No thank you. Those 3 words shouldn't come with consequences, but sometimes even when you do everything right, people will still be upset. That doesn't make you the asshole. That just makes you the adult in the room. Am I the asshole for telling my girlfriend she can't force me to cancel my vacation and lose $20,500 because she hates Harry Potter? Let's rewind. A man, 27 years old, the writer has been in a 4-year relationship with a woman he clearly loves. They've built a shared history, a life full of compromise and understanding, but sometimes even the strongest connections can shake when two values collide. Hard. This story begins with grief. The writer recently lost his father. That alone is heavy, a kind of loss that rearranges your world, whether you expect it or not. And with that grief came an inheritance. Not life-changing, but enough to lift a burden. Debt's gone, a little freedom, enough left over for something he's always dreamed of, a trip to Universal Orlando. Not just any trip. This was about more than roller coasters or photo ops. The writer had longed to visit the wizarding world of Harry Potter, something that had lived in his imagination for years, maybe even since childhood. A world that represented escape, magic, nostalgia, but he never made the leap before. Life was always too busy or too tight financially until now. So he plans it carefully, books it with a planner, every detail locked in. Plane tickets, hotel, parks, non-refundable. That part is crucial. He's going with his best friend, a fellow nerd, Star Wars fans both, splitting the trip between Universal and Disney World. A once-in-a-lifetime experience, the kind of memory you build once and hold on to forever. And at first, his girlfriend is on board. She's not joining, but she's supportive. She's never liked Harry Potter, not because of the story itself, but because of J.K. Rowling, and more specifically, Rowling's vocal opposition to transgender rights. The girlfriend has a deep personal stake in this. Her younger brother is trans. For her, this isn't just about politics, it's about family, it's about protection, it's about fighting for a world where people like her brother feel safe. So even though they'd agreed early on that the writer could enjoy Harry Potter if he wanted to, and she'd stay out of it, that unspoken tension always lingered. Until now. She finds out Rowling is allegedly funneling her wealth into anti-trans efforts. That pushes her over the edge. She snaps, tells the writer he can't go. Not shouldn't, not please reconsider. But you're not allowed to go. Suddenly, this vacation becomes a battleground, not between two theme parks. Not between fantasy franchises, but between love and principle, between honoring someone's identity and honoring the $2,500 you've already poured into something you've wanted for years. The writer tries to explain. Calmly. I get where you're coming from, but this trip is non-refundable. I'll lose everything I paid. And he means it. This isn't stubbornness. It's not defiance. It's reality. This money is gone if he doesn't go. He can change dates, but there's no refund. And let's be honest, most people can't afford to just walk away from $2,500, especially not in this economy. But to his girlfriend, it's not about money. It's about morality. It doesn't matter. You're still supporting transphobia if you go. Now, the room changes. It's no longer a conversation. It's a demand. A moral line drawn in the sand. And standing on the other side, someone who's grieving, who's finally doing something for himself, and who's being told, you're not allowed. That stings, because no matter how good your relationship is, no one wants to feel controlled. No one wants their autonomy yanked away, especially not over something that was never hidden, never a surprise. The writer didn't sneak off to the park. He told her everything, booked it openly, and now he's being made to feel like the villain in his own story. But here's where things get complicated. The writer isn't cold. He's not dismissive. He respects his girlfriend's feelings. He understands the emotional weight she carries for her brother. He even admits he's struggling to separate his own financial anxiety from her emotional hurt. That's the mark of someone who's trying to do the right thing. He's questioning himself. He's trying to weigh the $20,500 against someone's identity. That's not an easy math. But here's a question for all of us. Where's the line? Is it reasonable to ask someone to cancel a trip that's already paid for? To demand they eat the loss to make a statement they never agreed to? Is the writer really supporting transphobia just by walking through the gates of Universal? Or is he, like so many of us, caught in the web of a world where personal joy can be politicized, even when we have no control over where the money goes? And then there's the control. Because this isn't about the trip anymore. It's about power. It's about being told you can't. That doesn't sit well, and it shouldn't. The writer is 27, a grown man. He's not asking to do something shady. He's not hiding it. He just wants to go on a vacation he's dreamed of for years, something that brought him excitement after burying his father. And the demand to give it up, it comes with no compromise, no empathy. Just, it doesn't matter, you're not allowed. That's a red flag. Not because the girlfriend is wrong to care about trans rights, not at all, but because she's pushing the writer into a moral corner without leaving him a door to walk through. So, is the writer the asshole? No. He's a man grieving, trying to live, trying to hold space for someone else's pain without sacrificing every inch of his own joy. That's not easy, and the fact that he even asked this question tells you everything. This isn't about Harry Potter. It's about respect, autonomy, and finding space where two people with different values can still coexist. Because in a healthy relationship, you don't demand, you discuss, and if one person's principles start costing the other thousands of dollars with no room for compromise, that's not a relationship anymore. That's a cage.
Final thoughts?
The writer doesn't need to feel guilty for holding on to this dream. If he's willing to listen, be compassionate, and still stand by his decision, that's not selfishness, that's adulthood. And that $20,500, it's more than money. It's freedom. And after losing his father, maybe he needs a little bit of that. Am I the asshole for walking out of my sister's engagement dinner and refusing to attend her wedding after she humiliated me in front of my boyfriend, our family, and her future in-laws? Sometimes a celebration can unravel into a storm, and sometimes it's not the strangers or the outsiders who cause the deepest cuts. It's the people who are supposed to love you the most. This story begins at a family gathering meant to mark a beautiful milestone, an engagement dinner. The writer, a 26-year-old woman, attends the celebration of her sister's upcoming marriage. A big evening hosted at their parents' home, full of warmth, laughter, and generations of family. Her sister, the bride-to-be, is 30. Her fiancé's entire extended family is there. 3 living grandparents, a parade of aunts and uncles, parents, siblings. It's a full house, a high-stakes setting, and among them, the writer, accompanied by her boyfriend, just trying to enjoy the night. At first, things go well. The fiancé seems genuinely kind. He even makes an effort to reach out, to say how much he'd like to spend time with the writer and her boyfriend before the wedding. You know, the sort of thing people say when they're excited about bringing 2 families together. But then the air changes. The sister goes silent, uncomfortable, and then, without warning, she detonates. "We're doing nothing like that," she says. "Everyone freezes. She already stole one guy from me. She's not doing it again." Boom. Just like that, in the middle of the dinner, in front of not just family, but her future in-laws, she hurls an accusation from a decade ago. Let's pause there, because what she's referring to isn't just petty jealousy. She's resurrecting a deeply unsettling claim that when the writer was 16, her then boyfriend, a 21-year-old man, dumped her because he had feelings for the writer. 16. Not even old enough to drive in some places. Certainly not old enough to consent to anything with a legal adult. And yet, this is the bone her sister still chooses to gnaw on 10 years later in front of dozens of people, including the writer's boyfriend. To say the writer was blindsided would be an understatement. Let's be real here. This wasn't just a comment. It was a public ambush. The writer had already addressed this back when it happened. She told her sister nothing ever occurred. She never encouraged that man, never reciprocated anything, but the truth didn't seem to matter then, and it sure as hell didn't matter now, because her sister wasn't speaking to resolve. She was speaking to humiliate, to cast a shadow. But here's where it really twists. "You think you're so smug," her sister snaps, "but you're nothing but a whir." That wasn't a slip of the tongue. That wasn't heat of the moment frustration. That was intentional degradation. Cruelty, sharpened and unleashed. Right there at a dinner table filled with extended family and strangers. And honestly, who wouldn't want to run? The writer's boyfriend stood up for her. Her parents were furious. They immediately shut down the sister's accusation, defending the writer and rightfully calling out the fact that a 21-year-old man pursuing a 16-year-old is predatory, not something to be blamed on a child. But the damage was done. The writer chose to leave, and who could blame her? Sometimes the only thing you can do when you've been cut open in public is walk away with whatever dignity you have left. Weeks later, the dust has settled, and now the wedding date is announced. A relative passes along the invite. But the writer, she's not going. And this is where the voices begin again. But she's your sister. Family is forever. Walking out was already bad enough. You know those voices. The ones that romanticize blood ties and sweep trauma under the rug because it's family. But here's the thing most people forget. Being related doesn't give you a license to humiliate. Being sisters doesn't mean being someone's emotional punching bag. And forgiveness, that has to be earned, not demanded. What the writer endured wasn't a spat. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was character assassination in front of two entire families. 10 years of bitterness. One ruined evening. And now she's being asked to dress up, smile politely, and sit through a wedding that'll probably include toasts by the very woman who called her a whore in front of her boyfriend. For what? To keep up appearances? To preserve some twisted sense of family unity? Let's not forget, the writer was a child when that so-called betrayal supposedly happened. 16. And now at 26, she's still being dragged through the mud over it. She's being asked to swallow her pride for someone who, even in her moment of joy, chose to lash out in front of everyone. But here's the subtle truth. Sometimes choosing peace means stepping away, even from people who share your blood. The writer's parents support her. They know what happened. They see their older daughter's behavior for what it is: toxic, unhinged, and deeply unfair. The pressure? It's coming from the extended family, the ones who weren't there in that moment. The ones who always seem to speak the loudest when it costs them the least. So, is the writer the asshole? Absolutely not. She didn't make a scene. She removed herself from one. She didn't retaliate. She protected her peace. She didn't drag her sister's past into the open. She was dragged, humiliated, and left to pick up the pieces of a public betrayal she never deserved. This isn't about holding a grudge. This is about protecting your boundaries. Because when someone shows you, loudly and clearly, that they do not respect you, it's not your job to attend their celebration, not even if they're your sister. Final thoughts? The writer didn't ruin that dinner. She didn't destroy that relationship. She simply decided that the line had been crossed one too many times, and no amount of white dresses, champagne toasts, or wedding cake would make her forget the taste of being called a whore in front of her family. And to those who say, but your sisters don't do that. They just don't. Am I the asshole for not telling my ex his passport was revoked and causing him to miss his flight? Here's a story that doesn't just stir the pot, it flips it off the stove and lets it crash to the floor. Because this isn't about someone forgetting to send a text or showing up late to dinner. This is about power, control, and the fine line between co-parenting and manipulation. So, the writer, a mother of two and a woman who's been through the emotional gauntlet of divorce, has been officially free from her ex-husband for 2 years. 2 years of rebuilding, 2 years of trying to give her kids a healthy life after everything fell apart. Let's rewind for context. Everything was manageable at first. But after their daughter was born, the man she married practically became a stranger. The kind of man who cheats, lies, and expects you to just take it. And when he crossed the line with an affair, the writer did what many hesitate to. She filed for divorce. But this wasn't a clean break. No, her ex made it ugly. He dragged his feet, fought her on everything, probably hoping she'd give up. Eventually, the divorce was finalized, and the court granted the writer primary custody. Her ex was ordered to pay child support. Simple, legal, fair. But here's where things start to stink. He never paid a dime, not because he couldn't afford it, but because he didn't want to. It wasn't about money, it was about control. And writer, she didn't play his game, she didn't beg or plead, she let the legal system handle it through enforcement. But this man who owed thousands in support, still tried to position himself like he had authority in her life. And when writer planned a trip abroad with their kids to honor her recently deceased grandmother, she needed his permission to take them out of the country. Surprisingly, he agreed. Though, Of course, he had to throw in a comment that he was thinking of vacationing there too. Classic behavior. He wasn't tagging along for family bonding, he just couldn't stand the idea of her doing something without him. To protect herself, Ryder's lawyer drafted a document, official, notarized, with a clear clause that he had up to 72 hours before the flight to revoke permission. A firm deadline. He signed it. Then comes the day of the trip. Ryder, responsible and early, arrived at the airport with her 2 children, excited yet emotionally heavy from the reason for the trip. They got through check-in with ease. Everything was set. They had time to grab breakfast at a diner in the terminal, and then ring ring, her phone buzzes. It's him. Turns out his plans to hop on a plane were about to crash and burn. His passport? Revoked. Suspended due to unpaid child support. That's right. The consequences of his own inaction finally caught up with him. He couldn't board, he couldn't follow, and suddenly, it wasn't just about the trip anymore. He tells the writer he's revoking his permission, but it's too late. The 72-hour window has passed, and when that doesn't work, he throws out the wild accusation. I'll tell security you're kidnapping my kids. Seriously? Airport officers show up at the gate, but the writer, calm, prepared. She had all the legal documentation in hand. They reviewed it, saw everything was in order, and sent her and the children on their way, while her ex was left stuck behind, fuming in his own failure. Now you'd think that would be the end of it, but no. While she's in the air, finally breathing a moment of peace, he's busy calling her brother, whining about how cruel she was. And now some extended family are piling on, saying it was heartless not to warn him that his passport might be revoked. Let's be clear here. The writer didn't know for sure that his passport was revoked. She just suspected it might be. She didn't withhold anything. She wasn't scheming. She was just done parenting her ex. Should she have reminded a grown man to open his mail? Checked in to make sure the consequences of his own decisions wouldn't get in his way? No, that's not her job anymore. That's the whole point of a divorce. And let's not ignore the pattern. He doesn't pay support. He shows up uninvited. He tries to override legal agreements. Then when things blow up in his face, he cries victim. Ryder wasn't cruel. She was finally drawing a line, a boundary he's refused to recognize since day one. And if that meant he had to sit on the sidelines while she and the kids visited family and paid respects to a loved one, that's not cruelty. That's consequence. So, am I the asshole for not telling my ex his passport was revoked and causing him to miss his flight? If you ask us, this wasn't about travel. This was about someone trying to weaponize parenthood and realizing too late that they no longer held the power they once did. And the writer, she didn't ruin his trip. He did that all on his own. Am I the asshole for saying my mom's cheating did make her a worse parent? There are some truths in life that crack cleanly through the silence. Truths so sharp they don't just hurt, they scar. And for the writer, a 16-year-old girl still trying to patch together what remains of a broken home, one of those truths came out during a court-ordered therapy session. But this story didn't begin in a therapist's office. No, it began last year when everything she thought she could count on suddenly split apart. Ryder's father found out her mother was cheating. No warning signs, no long conversations, just the quiet collapse of a marriage. Just like that, her mother moved in with the affair partner, Ron, and expected life to carry on like nothing happened, like she just rearranged the furniture instead of shattering her family. Now, this is the part where things stop being adult problems and start becoming everyone's problems, especially for Ryder and her younger brother, just 13. You'd think a parent would tread carefully, knowing their children were caught in the fallout, but her mom? She wanted smiles, hugs, weekend visits, as if she hadn't just detonated their entire world. Ryder didn't want to see her mom anymore, and not out of pettiness or some misguided teenage rebellion, but because being near her felt like betrayal all over again. Her father respected her decision and passed that along to his lawyer, which brought the courts into it. That's when the judge ordered joint therapy sessions between Ryder and her mother. 1 hour a week, staring at the woman who broke her trust. And for nearly a year, that's the only time she sees her mother. Now, her little brother isn't so lucky. He's still forced to go to their mom's house every other weekend. He doesn't want to, but it's court-ordered. Her mom insists it's Ryder's fault, that he's just copying her behavior, because apparently acknowledging betrayal is a contagious act of rebellion. And that is where the manipulation begins to fester, not just between two adults, but from a mother to her children. Over the course of the year, they'd been through 3 different therapists, each one more frustrating than the last. None of them seemed to get it. None of them seemed to hear what wasn't being said. Until recently, a new therapist, one who, at least for now, seems willing to actually listen. This therapist didn't poke at Ryder with condescending questions like, "Why are you mad at your mom?" or "Don't you want to forgive her?" Instead, she let the mom speak. And oh, did she speak? She painted herself the victim. How unfair this all was, how she was a great mom who did everything right. She mourned the fact that her children could so easily discard her, and she wept over how they refused to give Ron, the man she cheated with, a fair chance. But here's the moment that shifted everything. The therapist finally turned to Ryder and asked if she had anything to say. And this time, she did. For the first time in nearly a year of sessions, she spoke with raw, unfiltered honesty. Ryder acknowledged that yes, her parents' relationship was their own. Adults make adult decisions. But what her mother didn't seem to understand was this: cheating doesn't stay between two people. It reverberates. It's not just about infidelity. It's about betrayal, upheaval, and the destruction of stability. She said what no child should ever have to explain to a parent, that cheating creates broken homes, that it forces children to process grief, anger, and confusion before they're even ready to name those feelings. Ryder went from believing in the security of her family to realizing her mother had been lying to her dad, to her brother. And then that same mother expected her to go live with the man who helped wreck it all. No space, no time to adjust, no healing. Just move in and play nice with Ron. And then came the words that must have landed like a hammer. "I don't see you the same way anymore. You're not someone I admire. You're not honest. You don't care who you hurt. Not Dad, not us. I don't want to be like you." Those weren't words said in anger. They were said in truth. The kind of truth that takes months to form in your throat, but burns the second it leaves your mouth. Ryder didn't just unload blame. She painted a clear picture of how her mother's actions did hurt her children. She called out the selfishness, the denial, the refusal to acknowledge that real damage had been done. And she pushed back hard against the idea that her brother's pain was somehow her fault. Then she said the line that echoed through the entire room: "Saying this never changed your parenting is wrong. It did make you a worse parent." Because parenting isn't just about feeding your kids and driving them to school. It's about the emotional space you create for them. And her mother filled that space with lies, guilt trips, and a constant demand for forgiveness she hadn't earned. Ryder closed by making her stance crystal clear. No hope for repair, no room for compromise. Her view was set, and she wasn't open to revisiting it. And in the silence that followed, her mother sat there, angry but quiet. She didn't get the last word, didn't get to spin her tale of victimhood one more time. For once, it was her daughter's voice that filled the room, and it stuck. Now Ryder is asking, am I the asshole for saying my mom's cheating did make her a worse parent? Let's be real. This isn't about holding a grudge. It's about recognizing that parenting doesn't exist in a vacuum. Your choices matter. They ripple. And when you demand love and loyalty without accountability, that's not parenting. That's entitlement. The writer didn't attack her mother. She didn't scream or lash out. She told the truth. A painful, well-earned, long-awaited truth. And sometimes the truth hurts more than anything else. Am I the asshole? My husband invites people over without telling me and expects me to cook, clean, and host with no warning. There's a certain kind of pressure that builds, not all at once, but slowly, like steam behind a closed door. It's the kind that creeps into your routine, your peace, and then suddenly erupts when someone crosses that line again, pretending it's no big deal. For the writer, that eruption came on a day like any other. She thought it would be quiet, simple. But then her husband did what he always does. He dropped the bomb. He told her that family and friends were coming over that same day. No warning, no planning. Just 4 hours until arrival. Let that sink in. 4 hours to clean the house, stock up the kitchen, run errands, cook, prep, smile, entertain. Pretend everything's fine. And for what? A casual get-together? A warm family moment? Not even close, because this isn't the kind of family where everyone laughs and pitches in. According to the writer, these are people who judge, who talk, who quietly assess your home, your food, your parenting, your outfit, your everything, and they don't hold back. Yet her husband stands there and tells her, it doesn't matter, they don't care. But here's the kicker. He knows they do. He knows exactly how they operate. He grew up in that dynamic. He gets it. And still, he shrugs off the emotional toll he's asking his wife to take, like it's nothing. This isn't just a one-time oversight. This is a pattern of dumping the entire mental load of hosting unannounced onto the writer while he coasts on the illusion of being the chill guy, the laid-back husband who's just trying to keep the peace. But peace doesn't come at the expense of someone else's labor, especially someone who's asked more than once for a simple compromise, a little notice, a heads up, just a couple of days to prepare, to get the groceries, clean the space, mentally brace herself for judgmental eyes. That's not being difficult. That's not being uptight. That's respecting boundaries and asking for basic partnership. But instead of listening, he labels her the problem, says she's uncooperative, says she's too rigid. So this time, she did something different. Instead of scrambling to play hostess while swallowing her resentment, she left. She walked out of the house and let him sit with the mess he created. And what happened? He canceled the gathering. Let that speak volumes. He didn't lift a finger, didn't throw together something simple, didn't go out and grab snacks. He canceled because the person who makes these gatherings function wasn't there to do it all for him. And yet now, he's sulking, acting like he's the one wronged, calling her the problem because she can't go with the flow. But let's call that out for what it is, emotional manipulation, plain and simple. He wants the benefits of a perfectly hosted evening without doing any of the work. He wants his wife to absorb all the pressure, all the judgment, all the chaos, while he plays the role of easygoing host. And when she refuses, suddenly she's the villain in his story. But let's be honest here. If your version of going with the flow is demanding your partner become a one-woman catering and cleaning service with less than a day's notice, you're not laid back. You're irresponsible. Let's break it down. The writer asked for reasonable notice. She's dealing with people who make her feel anxious and judged. She's asked repeatedly for her husband to respect her time and energy. And when he ignored all that, she finally set a boundary. That is not being difficult. That is survival. And the final nail in the coffin, when she returned home and asked what he planned for dinner, he had no answer. Just shrugged and said it was good they weren't coming after all. No accountability. No recognition of how much work she usually puts in. Just empty air and quiet sulking. So now the writer is left wondering, am I the asshole for finally saying enough and walking out? Let's be crystal clear. No, writer, you are not the asshole. You are a person who's been pushed past your limit, who gave chances, communicated needs, and was repeatedly ignored. Setting a boundary doesn't make you wrong, it makes you healthy. In fact, I'd go so far as to say, had you not walked out, the cycle would have just continued. Because people like your husband only stop pushing when they realize the button isn't working anymore. And maybe, just maybe, he needs to learn what it feels like to do it all himself. Am I the asshole for not stopping my teenage son's girlfriend from kissing him in the hospital? There are moments in a parent's life that shake them to the core, moments where everything else blurs and all that matters is my child okay? For the writer, that moment came in the form of a phone call, the kind every parent dreads. Their 17-year-old son had been in a car accident, a drunk driver, a pickup truck, and their son driving a small old convertible. You don't need to be a mechanic to know how that matchup ends. The damage was severe, the kind of severe that leaves metal twisted and hearts racing. Their son survived, thank God, but was left battered and broken, multiple injuries, stitches, bones fractured, the kind of recovery that doesn't just take time, but steals peace of mind along the way. So when the family, Ryder, his wife, and their 14-year-old daughter got to the hospital, the atmosphere was already heavy. You don't just walk into a room like that and feel normal. Everything's quiet but loud, still but tense. And then, about an hour later, the son's girlfriend arrives. She doesn't hesitate. She walks straight in, right up to that hospital bed, and she breaks. She kisses him, on the lips, on the face. She wraps him in her arms and holds on like letting go might shatter something. Not for attention, not for show, just love. Pure, scared, aching love. And the writer, he didn't stop her. Because in that moment, she wasn't some teenager acting dramatic. She was someone who rushed from work in her uniform, didn't care how she looked, didn't even stop to process, just ran to the side of the person she loves. The writer saw that, and he saw what it meant to his son, who was lying in that bed, hurt, scared, probably still replaying that crash in his head. The comfort she gave him was real. But on the drive home, a different kind of conversation began, one that had nothing to do with healing and everything to do with appearances. His wife, clearly unsettled, brought it up. She didn't like what she saw, said it felt weird, too intimate, too much, especially in front of family. She wanted the writer to have stepped in, to have told the girl to stop, maybe even leave. And this is where the tension quietly explodes. The writer tried to explain he wasn't seeing a spectacle, he was seeing comfort. He wasn't watching a teen romance. He was watching someone genuinely show up for his son in one of the worst moments of his life. That matters. That means something. But his wife saw something else entirely. She saw boundaries being crossed, a public display of affection in a place where emotions were already high. To her, it was inappropriate, maybe even gross. And suddenly this wasn't about a hospital room anymore. It became a debate about parenting, appearances, boundaries, respect, and even masculinity. Because, let's be honest, there's often a weird cultural tension when young men are emotionally supported so openly. Some people flinch when they see it. But here's where we really have to pause. This boy was in a hospital bed, injured, vulnerable, likely shaken by the kind of trauma that takes years to unpack. And in walked someone who didn't just say they cared, but showed it, without hesitation, with raw, sincere emotion. And now, the writer's being told that he should have stopped that he should have stripped away one of the only warm, comforting things his son had in that moment just because it made others uncomfortable? Let's be real here. This wasn't about PDA in a mall. This wasn't some teenager sneaking kisses in the basement. This was a crisis, a moment where all social pretenses should fall away, where comfort and human connection matter more than decorum. What the writer's wife might be grappling with, underneath the judgment, is fear. Maybe it's fear of her son growing up. Maybe it's the uncomfortable reality of seeing someone else, not her, be the one to comfort him now. That's hard. That's emotional. But it doesn't make the girl wrong, and it doesn't make the writer wrong for letting it happen. And yet here he is now, second-guessing himself, wondering if he should have intervened, wondering if choosing empathy over awkwardness made him a bad husband or parent. So, is the writer the asshole for not stopping his girlfriend from kissing him in the hospital? Absolutely not. This wasn't about crossing lines. This was about preserving peace and comfort in the middle of trauma. The writer protected that, and he should stand firm in knowing he made the right call. And maybe, just maybe, this is a moment where everyone else needs to reevaluate their priorities. Because when you're standing in a hospital room, staring down the fragility of life, love isn't the problem. Coldness is. And shutting it down, that's not protection. That's isolation. So no, writer, you're not the problem. You're the parent who knew exactly what mattered in that moment, and you chose compassion over control. And that's real parenting. Am I the asshole for saying I don't want to be my friend's fat bridesmaid aesthetic? There comes a moment, sometimes quiet, sometimes jarring, when a friendship you once thought was solid starts to feel like performance art. For the writer, that moment came wrapped in satin, stitched in silence, and served with a side of bridal delusion. The writer is 29. Her friend 30 is getting married this October. Now they've been close since college, shared dorm rooms, late night tears, inside jokes only they would understand. But somewhere along the way, something shifted. The friendship stopped feeling mutual and started feeling curated. The wedding planning rolled in like a freight train, and suddenly everything was about aesthetic. That word, that obsession. Not meaning, not memories, just vibes. And then came the dresses. The writer, size 16, is one of several bridesmaids. But when the dresses were announced, there wasn't a discussion. No group message asking what felt comfortable, no late night FaceTime to gush over colors, just a reveal. And what was revealed? Dresses so tight, they didn't drape, they gripped, they clung like shrink wrap. Think Skims, but if Skims had an attitude, the kind of tight that makes you question if breathing is optional. Meanwhile, the rest of the bridal party, sizes 2 through 6, thin, petite, picture perfect for the bride's Instagram vision board. So the writer rightfully asked the question anyone would ask in her shoes, are there other options? And that's when the mask cracked, just a little. Her friend laughed and said, no, I love how it looks with all different body types. It's giving real women. Pause. Real women? What does that even mean? Since when did being a real woman become a costume choice for someone else's aesthetic? This wasn't about celebrating diversity. This was about using it as an accessory. And here's where the story takes a hard turn. The writer, tired of the subtle digs disguised as compliments, straight up asked her friend, do you just want me in this wedding so you can say you have body diversity? That's the kind of question that cuts through the noise. Her friend went quiet. And then she delivered the dagger in the form of faux flattery. You're so confident, though. That's why I wanted you in it. Translation? You make me look better. You're my statement piece. You're not standing beside me because you're my best friend. You're there to serve the aesthetic. And the writer had enough. She told her, I'm not comfortable being your walking body positivity prop. That she wasn't going to contort herself, literally and emotionally, into some Pinterest fantasy of inclusion. That if the bride wanted a lookbook wedding, maybe she should call up one of her influencer friends instead. The fallout was instant. Tears, accusations, the bride sobbing about her vision being ruined, and the group chat, dead silent. The kind of silence that speaks volumes. No one rushing to defend the writer. No one checking in, just awkwardness. And now, the writer's left wondering, was I too harsh? Am I the one who broke something that didn't need to be broken? Even her boyfriend thinks she just suck it up. It's one day, he says. But is it really? Because this isn't just about one day. It's about years of swallowing discomfort. Years of hearing you're so confident used like a leash. Years of being someone's contrast instead of their equal. The writer is done pretending things don't bother her. And can you blame her? Weddings are supposed to celebrate love, not perform it. And friendship? That's not about aesthetic balance. That's about being seen, respected, valued, not used. So, is the writer the asshole for refusing to be her friend's fat bridesmaid aesthetic? Absolutely 100% not. The writer set a boundary, a healthy, necessary boundary. And instead of adjusting her vision, the bride chose to guilt trip and gaslight. Let's be honest. If a vision can't survive basic respect and inclusivity, then it's not a vision, it's a costume party. The writer isn't selfish, she's just no longer willing to play a role in someone else's filtered version of reality. And that takes courage, because it's not easy to call out the people you love. It's not easy to say, I deserve better than this. But the alternative is continuing to be a prop in someone else's play. So no, writer, you're not the asshole. You're the one who finally decided to stop fitting in and start standing up. Am I the asshole for sneaking out and causing my sister to lose her job? There's a certain kind of pressure that builds in silence, the kind that weighs heavy, not with noise, but with expectation. And for the writer, that pressure didn't come from a full-time job or a college final. It came from a baby, a 3-month-old baby who wasn't hers. The writer is 14, that impossible age where you're too old to be coddled, but still far too young to be carrying the weight of a household on your back. Her sister, 33, just had a baby, A sweet little girl, loved deeply, yes, but needing care every hour of the day. And as soon as school let out for the summer, it wasn't rest that the writer received. It was responsibility, heavy, constant, unforgiving responsibility. No training, no easing into it. Just, here's a baby, now, figure it out. The writer was told this was temporary. Her sister wanted to finally go back to work. The baby's father, nowhere in sight. Her mom, working night shifts with the sister. Her dad, traveling constantly for his job in steelwork. And so the person left holding the bottle, changing diapers, listening to cries that never come with instructions, was a 14-year-old girl. Let that settle in. A child watching an infant with zero preparation for hours every single day. And yes, Ryder tried. She tried to be mature, tried to be strong. She stayed up, watched the baby with fearful eyes, afraid to sleep in case something happened. She fed her, changed her, cried in silence when it got too loud in her own head. Ryder suffers from overstimulation and insomnia. And babies? They are constant noise. Even in silence, there's tension. Is she breathing? Is she okay? That kind of anxiety isn't a small ask for a teenager. Ryder brought it up to her mom, asked about daycare, asked if there were any other options. But her concerns were brushed aside. You'll have to deal with it, they said, as if she hadn't already been dealing with it. But here's the thing. People can only stretch so far before they snap. And one day, Ryder did just that. Tired, overwhelmed, running on empty and afraid of falling apart completely, Ryder packed a bag, quietly slipped out of the house, and went to her friend's place. Just to sleep, just to rest, just to be a kid again. That night, the world spun without her. Missed calls, angry messages, and when she finally returned, her sister and mom were furious. The sister, now jobless, accused her of being selfish, said she quit because Ryder made it clear she wouldn't be her safety net anymore. The family turned cold. Conversations died. Even her dad, though more understanding, gently said she shouldn't have done that. But here's what no one seemed willing to ask. What were they expecting from a 14-year-old? This wasn't just babysitting. This was parenting. And no matter how cute the baby is, no matter how much Ryder loves her niece, love does not make this level of pressure okay. The writer didn't abandon her niece out of spite. She wasn't being dramatic or lazy. She was drowning in noise and expectation, anxiety and sleep deprivation. And when no one threw her a life jacket, she swam the only way she knew how, out the front door. And maybe that was the only way to get anyone to listen. Because when you're the dependable one, when you're quiet, compliant, agreeable, people forget to check if you're okay until you crack. And that's what happened here. So is the writer the asshole for sneaking out and causing her sister to lose her job? Let's call it like it is. Absolutely not. What happened here wasn't one girl's rebellion. It was the result of adults failing to protect a child. This isn't about one night. It's about a pattern, about pushing someone beyond what they can handle and then blaming them when they collapse. There's nothing wrong with helping family, but help is voluntary. Help should come with support and choice, not guilt, not obligation, not silence. And when you're the one expected to carry it all, day after day, without sleep, without thanks, the real question becomes, who's really failing the family here? Because the writer, she didn't ask for this. She spoke up. She begged for another solution. And when no one listened, she chose herself. And if choosing your mental health, choosing to protect your own peace, is what gets you labeled selfish, then maybe selfish isn't the insult they think it is. Sometimes choosing yourself is the bravest thing you can do. Am I the asshole for saying no to hosting my sister-in-law and her additional needs? Kid overnight again? Some stories don't start with a dramatic betrayal or an explosive fight. Sometimes they begin with a simple act of generosity and the slow, steady unraveling of boundaries no one thought to protect. That's where the writer's story begins. The writer lives with their partner and their 4-year-old son in a spacious, structured home. A home where routine matters, where screens are limited, where bedtime is sacred, and where a sense of peace and predictability is not just preferred, it's necessary. A few months back, the writer's sister-in-law, who we'll call CL, needed a place to stay. She was coming to the area for her daughter's autism assessment. The child is 3, a toddler with suspected additional needs, the kind of visit that pulls at your empathy, your compassion, your sense of family duty. So the writer did what many would consider the kind, supportive thing: opened their doors, offered to host, even suggested booking a hotel and covering the cost themselves, just to preserve some structure in their own home. But that offer was brushed off, and what followed? Chaos. From the moment Seal and her daughter arrived, things felt off. It wasn't just the usual tension that comes with house guests, it was constant overstimulation. The little girl was glued to her iPad, volume up high, and not just at certain times, constantly. Morning to night, mealtime, iPad, iPad. Bedtime, still the iPad, glowing and echoing down the halls. And anytime Sile tried to lower the volume, the child would scream, and Sile would give in. And look, this isn't a story about judging a child with additional needs. It's not about the iPad. It's not about the noise. It's about the lack of boundaries, the lack of preparation, the silence when something clearly wasn't working. At first, the writer and their partner tried to stay open-minded. Their own son, just a year older, was fascinated by his cousin. They thought maybe this is a teaching moment, a way to show him that some people have different needs, different routines, and for a moment, it seemed like it might work. But then day 3 hit, and it all started to fall apart. Screaming, banging, night after night, the iPad still blaring past bedtime, the toddler unable to settle. The writer's son, sensitive and tired, asked if he could sleep in their room just to escape the noise, a child asking for safety in his own home. And during the day, Sil would say she was going for a quick walk and disappear. Hours would pass, no warning, no plan, just gone. Leaving her daughter behind as if the writer had signed up for full-time childcare. They hadn't, but they tried. They stocked the freezer with snacks they'd never buy, bought foods they knew the little girl would eat, did the drives, accommodated the needs, and bent every single rule of their household just to make it work. And still, it wasn't enough. The tipping point came quietly after the visit had ended, when the exhaustion finally had space to speak. The writer brought it up to their partner. They said, "I can't do that again, not like that." But instead of support, they were met with disagreement. Their partner thought they were being too harsh. And now, it's happening again. Seal needs to come back for more assessments, and she's asked once again to stay with them. No hotel, no changes. Just, "Can we come?" And the writer this time said no. Not because they don't care, not because they're heartless, but because they know what it costs to say yes. Because here's what no one seems to ask in situations like this: who is looking after the people who keep saying yes? It's so easy to assume that the kind, dependable family member will always bend, that they'll always offer the spare bed, rearrange their schedule, rewire their routines, and take the emotional hit, all in the name of being supportive. But support has to go both ways. And the truth is, hosting Seal and her daughter wasn't just inconvenient, it was disruptive, exhausting, and at times deeply overwhelming. It took a toll on everyone, including a 4-year-old boy who just wanted to feel safe in his own home. So is the writer the asshole for saying no this time? Let's be honest, absolutely not. This isn't about rejecting family. It's about recognizing limits, about setting boundaries before resentment sets in, about being willing to say, "I love you, but I cannot do this again, not like this." Because being empathetic doesn't mean being self-sacrificial. You can care deeply and still say, "Not in my home." The real problem here isn't that the writer said no, it's that no one else is stepping up. Seal isn't making other plans. The partner isn't offering to handle the chaos. It's always the writer left managing the fallout. And if no one else is willing to carry the load, then maybe it's time they stopped asking the one person who already has. Am I the asshole for leaving my sister-in-law's house after she invited me over to not be alone but just wanted free childcare? There are losses that leave a scar, and then there are the ones that rip you open so completely it feels like the air itself becomes unbearable. For the writer, this wasn't just about grief, it was about being unseen in the darkest moment of their life. The writer had just made the unimaginable decision to put down their cat. Not a pet, not an accessory, a companion, a lifeline, the kind of bond that transcends the typical, the kind that carries you through breakups, breakdowns, moves, jobs, losses, milestones, life. And now he was gone. And the writer was left hollow, crumbling inside. So when her sister-in-law called, offering company, offering comfort, offering presence, it felt like a sliver of light through the fog, an invitation not to fix anything, not to talk about solutions or silver linings, but simply to not be alone. And when you're drowning, sometimes that's all you need. Someone to just sit beside you in the wreckage. But the moment the writer arrived, that promise of comfort began to unravel. Instead of space to grieve, she was ushered into movement. No time to breathe, no chance to sit, just let's go. They were picking up the kids from school, immediately, without pause. And when one of the children refused to get off the jungle gym, an all too familiar parenting challenge, Syl looked to the writer, expecting her to physically remove the child. Let's pause here for a second. The writer was barely holding herself upright. She had been crying for hours, hadn't slept, hadn't eaten, the kind of grief that makes you question if your body will even make it to the next hour. And somehow she was expected to step in and discipline someone else's child? That's not companionship. That's convenience. Back at Syl's house, it didn't get better. The writer was assigned homework duty for the kids. No checking in, no asking, "Are you okay to help?" Just an assumption that she was ready and able to jump into a parenting role mid-breakdown. And when the writer, desperate for just one moment of acknowledgement, tried to talk about her cat, about her grief, about the hole that had torn open inside her, she was dismissed. "You're just having a moment. We don't need to dwell." Words that sting, words that silence, words that tell you, your grief makes me uncomfortable, so let's pretend it's not happening. Imagine needing to scream and someone offering you a whisper. Then came the final blow, the bathroom request. Syl asked the writer to help her son in the bathroom, a request that might sound small on paper, but in context, it was the moment everything broke. The writer had been quietly breaking the entire time. Her grief wasn't loud, but it was constant, like a pressure behind the eyes that won't ease up, like your body no longer feels like yours. And now, she was being asked to play caretaker, to literally step into a role she never agreed to, while she was still emotionally bleeding. So she did the only thing she could. She left. She didn't shout. She didn't create a scene. She walked away before she lost what little was holding her together. She chose herself. For the first time in that painful 24 hours, she protected what was left of her peace. And what did Syl do in response? She sent a text, a passive-aggressive one, too, saying the writer had upset the kids by storming out, that she was just trying to help her take her mind off things. But here's the truth. There's a big difference between comfort and distraction. Distraction is what people offer when they don't know how to sit with your pain. It's easier to hand you a task than to hand you a tissue. But sometimes the most powerful thing someone can do is witness you. Let you fall apart. Be still with you in the mess. The writer didn't need errands. She didn't need to play tutor. She needed to be seen as a human being who had just lost one of the most important parts of her world. She needed to be held, not handed a chore list. So, is the writer the asshole for leaving? Not even close. She was misled, manipulated by good intentions that came with strings. Her grief was minimized, her presence exploited, and when she asserted the smallest boundary, walking out, she was made to feel like the problem. But grief doesn't operate on anyone else's schedule. And you are allowed to say, "I can't do this right now. I am breaking. I need care, not responsibility." You are allowed to walk away from anyone who cannot see the weight you are carrying. This isn't about kids. It's not about bathroom breaks or homework. It's about respect and emotional honesty and the right to grieve without being asked to perform. The writer's silence when she walked out wasn't cold. It was sacred. Sometimes the most powerful statement you can make is leaving quietly when the world refuses to hear your pain.